sometimes not easy to remember. I was listening to one of the TV morning programs this week, and they had on there a young lad from America, and he decided as a young man at school that people's stories needed to be told. And so he's travelling all over the world at the moment, collecting stories of people that fought in the 2 world wars. And he's in this country at the moment collecting those stories. And he's sleeping in his car so he can do it. That's how committed he is to finding those stories. And it sort of struck home to me that here's a young man, he's probably in his early 20s at the moment, but he started doing it when he was at school. And he puts them onto YouTube, and he's making a whole site on YouTube about people's stories. And they had an Air Force pilot on that served in the World War. He flew a Mosquito. And he was telling one of his stories as he flew over Berlin. And he had his co-pilot with him in this Mosquito. And an explosion went off underneath his plane and blew his plane up in the air, cut out all his engines and everything else. And he said he just turned to his co-pilot and said, don't worry, it'll all come back on in a moment, not knowing whether his engines would ever come back on or not. And eventually his engines came back on and they made it back home. And his co-pilot said to him, were you not afraid at that time? And he says, of course I was. He said, I didn't know whether the engines would come back on or not. But he flew other operations. That was his 5th operation. This guy had flown about 20 operations in an aircraft. He said, the young lad said, we need to celebrate our heroes like this. And this man said, no. He said, I was not a hero. He said, I just flew a Mosquito and I was lucky because I was flying a fast aircraft. He said, the ones that flew the Lancaster bombers couldn't get away because their aircraft was slow and cumbersome. He said, they were the real heroes in the Air Force, but this gentleman couldn't see that he was an hero because he put his life on the line for other people. And that's the thing, that people put their lives on the line for what they believe is right. Whether we believe it's right or wrong is not what we're talking about, but the everyday average soldier puts their life on the line for what they believe is right. They are told what they've got to do. They are given orders and they have to follow them. If our soldiers don't follow orders, then the army fails. And sometimes we forget that these men are following orders. No matter what side of the war they're on, they're following orders. And I think it's something we can learn as Christians, to follow orders, not from other human beings, but from our Father in heaven. Too often, we do not follow what he tells us to do, and we wonder why things fail. We need to listen to him and take an example from the people that went to war, the people that still go to war all over the world even today. But the thing is, if we start following the orders of our Father in heaven, do you know, people keep saying to me, how can we stop wars? we can start to love. And if we start to love one another, that's how we stop wars. Doesn't matter what we think of each other, but if we love one another, we can stop wars. We can stop arguments. Just by love. Not our own love, but the Father's love. But we've got to allow that to come through us. Let's just worship.